Hi everyone, this is Ken Briggs with Current History, back here with another quick take. And today I'm going to be talking about my new post that's up today that discusses last week's action in Europe to indefinitely freeze Russian central bank assets held in European institutions. Now, this money has been held since the beginning of the war in Ukraine in 2022. We're talking about roughly $247 billion that have been basically frozen in place for almost 4 years. European leaders have insisted that this was temporary the whole time. The money was frozen, not seized. Ownership hadn't changed. Basically, a lot of legal obfuscation, so to say. But this week that changed. Rather last week, when Europe decided to freeze these assets indefinitely, which made them available to use as backing for loans to fund Ukraine. Now that sounds fairly technical, but it really marks a shift in how Europe has approached power on the international stage. So basically, for decades, sovereign reserves were treated as untouchable. Think of it like a sort of gentleman's agreement between states. You don't touch my central bank money and I won't touch yours. That rule mattered because it made global finance predictable. Countries could park money abroad without worrying it would be used against them politically. And Europe, as a major financial center, benefited from that system as much as anyone. Which is why this decision to actually do something with this money has taken so long. Europeans understood the risk, and once you politicize money at this level, it's hard to, or at least it takes a while to go back. But I don't think they really had a choice in the matter. The system, global financial system, it really only works in international order generally. It really only works if everyone plays by the rules. And Russia didn't just bend the rules, it pretty much destroyed them with bombs, destroying Ukrainian cities, crossing their borders, ignoring treaties, and engaging in provocative, what are known as gray zone tactics in Europe. Not quite war, but kind of hostile in things that could precipitate war at some point. So at this point, restraint has really stopped protecting the system and started protecting the aggressor, Russia. And each effort by Europe to stay neutral looks less like principle and more like hesitation. And this is the moment when, unfortunately, rules stop deterring behavior and start inviting pressure. And that is when only one country tries to unilaterally enforce and uphold them while the other has no interest in doing so. And this whole saga made me think of a pretty crude analogy. Not pretty crude, but maybe simple is the better word, which came to me from the movie American Sniper, which is written about legendary U.S. Marine sniper Chris Kyle. And there's a scene that kind of sets the stage at the beginning of that film where Chris Kyle is a child sitting at the dinner table and his father is lecturing him about how there are basically three types of people in the world: the sheep, who want to live in peace, the wolves who want to prey on the sheep, and the sheepdogs who protect the sheep when order breaks down or when the fences keeping the wolves out fall apart. Basically, most people want peace. Some people prey on that peace. And someone at some point has to step in and say, look, enough's enough. We got to restore order here. And so Europe spent decades trying not to be, for lack of a better word, the sheepdog. It wanted to be a neutral referee, but that only works if everyone respects the referee. So once one side stopped doing that, Europe had to decide whether to keep pretending or accept a role it had always avoided. So why is it doing this now? Well, freezing the assets indefinitely is not a clean solution. I would say it's the least bad one. Returning the money would reward coercion and aggression by Russia. Doing nothing provides or weakens Ukraine by basically taking funding that they could be using for the war effort off the table, while seizing it outright would shred legal norms even faster. So I think this approach is a good middle ground. It maintains leverage for Europe as well, and that matters because as the U.S. and Russia maneuver over Ukraine's future, Europe doesn't want to show up empty-handed. They want leverage at the table. And now nothing about these assets can get decided without Europe at the table and making a decision to reverse this freeze. And so, well, you might think this is about abandoning norms. I think I see it more as a temporary pause that's about a sequence that has to happen to restore order here. So stabilization has to come first, repair comes later. And you can't rebuild the rules while the actor who broke them is still unconstrained and running wild. So that to me is the crux of the matter. How do we get from a place where Russia is acting completely against the norms of international behavior to a place where they no longer pose this kind of threat? And it's not necessarily being nice and upholding norms, though that will come later. So if you want the full argument and my thoughts on why this matters for the future of global finance and foreign policy, the full piece is up now over on Current History. You can find the link below in the comments. So thanks for listening, and I will see you again soon.